The current crisis between Israel and Iran, which now teeters on the edge of open warfare, is the culmination of decades of deep-seated hostility. For years this conflict has been waged in the shadows, a dangerous contest of espionage, cyber attacks, and targeted assassinations. The primary source of this tension is Iran's nuclear program, which Israel views as a direct and undeniable existential threat to its very survival. Israeli leaders have consistently vowed to prevent Iran from ever acquiring a nuclear weapon, a red line that has guided their military and diplomatic strategy for generations. This long-standing animosity, once a simmering undercurrent in Middle Eastern geopolitics, has now burst into plain sight, threatening to engulf the region in a devastating conflict with global consequences. The situation escalated dramatically following the American withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear deal in 2018, which removed the diplomatic guardrails that had previously contained Iran's atomic ambitions. In response, Iran accelerated its uranium enrichment activities, pushing the boundaries of international agreements. This led to a critical turning point in October 2024, when Israel executed a bold and precise military operation, successfully damaging nearly all of Iran's vital S-300 air defense systems. This preemptive strike was designed to create a window of opportunity for Israeli aircraft to operate more freely over Iranian airspace, a clear signal that a larger-scale attack on nuclear facilities was not just possible, but actively being planned for the near future. In recent weeks, as of June 2025, Israel has moved beyond covert operations, launching a series of targeted military strikes against key Iranian nuclear and military installations. These attacks represent a significant and overt shift in strategy, moving the conflict from the shadows into the open. The strikes were aimed at crippling Iran's ability to advance its nuclear program and disrupting its military command structure. Israel's actions were a calculated risk, intended to degrade Iran's capabilities before it could cross the nuclear threshold. However, this direct aggression has predictably provoked a fierce and immediate response, pushing both nations closer to an all-out war that neither may be able to fully control. Iran's retaliation was swift and resolute. In a powerful display of its own military strength, Tehran unleashed waves of drones and ballistic missiles aimed at targets inside Israel. This response was not merely symbolic. It was designed to demonstrate that any attack on Iranian soil would come at a high price. Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian publicly declared that even if its nuclear facilities were destroyed, the nation's technological knowledge was indestructible and the sites would be rebuilt. This defiant stance underscores Iran's commitment to its strategic goals and its willingness to engage in direct military confrontation, setting the stage for a dangerous cycle of attack and counterattack that now captivates a nervous world. The direct confrontation between Israel and Iran has inevitably drawn in a complex network of regional actors, transforming a bilateral conflict into a multi-front tinderbox. Iran's most powerful proxy, Hezbollah in Lebanon, has been placed on high alert, its formidable arsenal of rockets aimed at northern Israel. Simultaneously, Iran-backed militias in Syria and Iraq have increased their operational readiness, posing a direct threat not only to Israel but also to United States personnel stationed in the region. These groups act as an extension of Iran's military reach, allowing Tehran to challenge Israel from multiple directions without necessarily risking its own forces in a ground war, creating a volatile and unpredictable battlefield that stretches across several national borders. Neighboring Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, find themselves in a precarious and deeply uncomfortable position. While they share Israel's concerns about Iran's regional ambitions and nuclear program, they are also acutely vulnerable to the fallout from a wider war. Both Riyadh and the UAE have publicly called for restraint and a return to diplomatic solutions, fearing that any escalation could endanger their critical oil infrastructure and destabilize their economies. Their primary concern is to avoid being caught in the crossfire of a major regional conflict, a delicate balancing act that forces them to navigate complex allegiances while advocating for a de-escalation that seems increasingly unlikely. The international community is watching these developments with grave concern, and global powers are struggling to find a unified response. The United States, under the Trump administration, finds itself in a difficult position. While expressing frustration with Iran's hardline stance in nuclear talks, Washington has publicly stated it will not participate directly in an Israeli strike. However, the United States has also signaled it may provide intelligence and defensive support if Iran retaliates, and has ordered the voluntary departure of non-essential personnel from the region. This stance reflects a desire to avoid another major Middle Eastern war, while simultaneously supporting a key ally and containing Iranian influence. Other global powers have taken different approaches, further complicating the diplomatic landscape. The European Union is urgently calling for de-escalation, warning of the catastrophic risks a war would pose to global security and energy markets. Meanwhile, Russia and China have condemned the military actions and criticized what they see as Western pressure on Iran. Both nations have significant economic and strategic interests in the region, with China being particularly concerned about the potential for major disruptions to its oil supply from the Gulf. The United Nations has held emergency meetings, appealing for dialogue and restraint from all sides. But its calls for peace have so far been unable to halt the slide toward a larger conflict. The escalating conflict has sent shockwaves through the global economy, with the most immediate and pronounced impact felt in the world's energy markets. The prospect of a full-scale war in the Middle East, a region responsible for a significant portion of global oil production, has caused crude oil prices to surge dramatically. Traders and investors are reacting to the profound uncertainty and the very real possibility of severe supply disruptions. This price spike directly affects consumers worldwide through higher gasoline prices and increased transportation costs for goods, threatening to fuel inflation and slow down economic growth on a global scale at a time when many nations are already facing financial fragility. A central point of concern is the security of the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow maritime choke point through which approximately 1/5 of the world's oil supply passes. Iran has repeatedly threatened to disrupt or close this vital shipping lane in response to military pressure, a move that would have catastrophic consequences for the global economy. The mere threat has been enough to cause a significant spike in insurance premiums for commercial shipping in the region, making it more expensive and riskier to transport oil and other goods. Britain has already issued warnings to its commercial vessels about the increased threat level, highlighting the tangible economic fallout of the military posturing long before a wider war even begins. The instability has also rattled global financial markets far beyond the oil sector. Stock markets from New York to Tokyo have experienced increased volatility as investors grapple with the geopolitical risk. The uncertainty surrounding the conflict's potential scope and duration makes it difficult for businesses to plan for the future, leading to a pullback in investment and a flight towards safer assets like gold and government bonds. This risk-off sentiment can stifle economic activity and undermine consumer and business confidence, creating a ripple effect that touches nearly every sector of the global economy, from manufacturing and retail to technology and finance. Against this backdrop of economic anxiety, diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the crisis have completely stalled. Nuclear negotiations between the United States and Iran, which were scheduled to take place in Oman, are now at a total impasse, with little hope for a breakthrough. The International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, recently took the significant step of formally censuring Iran for its lack of cooperation, a move that could see its case referred to the United Nations Security Council. In a defiant response, Iran announced plans to open a third uranium enrichment plant, signaling its refusal to bow to international pressure. This collapse of diplomacy has removed the last remaining off-ramp, making military escalation seem all the more inevitable. As the world holds its breath, experts and analysts are contemplating several possible scenarios, each with profound implications for the Middle East and beyond. The most feared outcome is a full-scale, broader war. In this scenario, Israel's strikes and Iran's retaliations spiral out of control, drawing in regional proxies like Hezbollah and various militias. This would open up multiple fronts against Israel and could directly involve United States forces in the region, potentially triggering a catastrophic conflict that destabilizes the entire Middle East. Such a war would lead to immense human suffering, shatter regional economies, and create a geopolitical crisis on a scale not seen for decades, with unpredictable consequences for global alliances. A second, less devastating but still dangerous possibility is a series of limited contained exchanges. In this scenario, Israel conducts targeted strikes designed to achieve specific military objectives, without triggering an all-out Iranian response. Iran, in turn, might retaliate in a measured way, perhaps through its proxies or with limited missile strikes, to save face and deter further attacks. This would result in a protracted, low-intensity conflict, a war between the wars, that keeps the region on a permanent state of high alert. While this outcome avoids the worst-case scenario, it would still lead to ongoing instability, economic disruption, and the constant risk of miscalculation leading to a larger war. A third, more optimistic scenario, though currently seen as the least likely, involves a return to secret backchannel diplomacy. Some analysts believe that the current military brinkmanship could be a high-stakes negotiating tactic designed to force concessions from the other side. According to this view, the threat of war is so dire that it might compel both Israel and Iran, with pressure from international powers, to return to the negotiating table. A last-minute diplomatic breakthrough could pull the region back from the brink, potentially leading to a new, albeit fragile, understanding that de-escalates the immediate crisis and reopens a path for resolving the underlying nuclear issue through peaceful means. Ultimately, the conflict between Israel and Iran stands as one of the most significant and perilous challenges to global stability today. The stakes could not be higher, involving the threat of nuclear proliferation, the security of global energy supplies, and the potential for a regional war with devastating human and economic costs. The actions taken by leaders in Jerusalem, Tehran, and Washington in the coming days and weeks will determine whether the region descends into a catastrophic conflict or finds a narrow path back toward a tense but manageable peace. The entire world is watching, acutely aware that the outcome of this crisis will shape the geopolitical landscape for years to come.